There's something uncomfortable that happens when you change, especially when you change in ways people didn't expect. And after 60, when you're supposed to be settling down, slowing down, or letting go, you might notice people pulling away. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something brave. And let's be clear, they don't actually hate you. What they hate is the discomfort they feel around your growth. Your decision to step out of old patterns, to say no when you used to say yes, to stop shrinking just to fit in familiar spaces. Your growth holds up a mirror to others, especially those who haven't dared to grow themselves. When you grow, especially in the later chapters of life, you become a living mirror, not intentionally, not with pride or provocation, but simply by choosing to evolve when others expected you to stay the same. Your growth doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it quietly stands tall. And that alone is confronting. Here's why. Most people build their comfort around what's familiar, not what's true. When you start making changes, setting boundaries, prioritizing your peace, asking deeper questions, it disrupts the status quo. It shines a light on what they've kept hidden, on the habits they never challenged, on the dreams they've buried, on the wounds they've convinced themselves were just part of life. They may not even understand why they're irritated by you, but deep down, your evolution exposes where they've remained stagnant. It makes them question why they stopped trying or why they never started. That discomfort, it's not about you. It's about what your presence now brings to the surface: shame, regret, avoidance. And instead of owning that, they may turn it on you with distance, with criticism, with backhanded comments like, "You've changed," or "Why are you making such a big deal now?" But the truth is, you've just started honoring things they've long avoided, like truth, healing, rest, or boundaries. It's painful, but it's powerful. You're not responsible for carrying what others won't face. You are responsible for continuing to grow in the direction of wholeness, even if it costs you approval. Because what you're building now, that's not just growth, it's freedom. One of the most disorienting parts of growth after 60 is realizing that some people aren't mourning the loss of you, they're mourning the loss of who you used to be for them. The version of you that made their life easier, the version that stayed quiet to keep the peace, the one who always said yes, even when it cost you your well-being. They don't necessarily hate the person you've become, but they're uncomfortable with the fact that you no longer serve the same emotional role in their life. Maybe you were the fixer, the caregiver, the forgiver, the one who held everything together even when it was pulling you apart. And now you've started saying, "Not anymore." That shift, it's powerful but unsettling for those who benefited from your exhaustion. You didn't just change, you healed. You questioned patterns that once felt like your identity. You stopped showing up out of guilt and started choosing yourself out of love. And that decision removed the emotional discounts people had been receiving for years. It's not that they don't love you. It's that they loved the version of you who never asked for much, who kept the spotlight off yourself, who didn't disrupt the script they were used to reading from. The moment you stepped out of that role, you became harder to manage, not harder to love, but harder to manipulate. And here's the painful truth. For some people, love is easier when it's one-sided, when it's on their terms, when you don't ask them to grow alongside you. But don't confuse their nostalgia for a healthier past. It wasn't better, it was just more convenient for them. You've stepped into your truth now, into a fuller, freer, more honest self. And while some people will walk away from that version, the right ones will finally see you not for what you did for them, but for who you truly are. Guilt is one of the most silent prison guards we carry, especially as we grow older. For years, it convinced you to stay small, to stay agreeable, to overextend yourself in the name of love, family, loyalty, or duty. Not because you were weak, but because somewhere along the way you were taught that putting yourself last was the most noble thing you could do. But something changed after 60. You stopped confusing guilt with goodness. And you started asking, why do I feel bad for protecting my peace? Or why am I the one apologizing when I'm the one who's been hurt? That's when guilt started to lose its grip. Not all at once, but slowly, like untying a knot that had been pulling tight for decades. And as you loosened that knot, you realized how much of your past was shaped by emotional obligation. You showed up to events you didn't want to be at. You said yes when every part of your body screamed no. You let people speak to you in ways that drained your spirit because you didn't want to make a scene or be seen as selfish. But now you understand that self-betrayal is not the price of love, and that saying no is not a sign of cruelty, it's a sign of emotional clarity. You're no longer held hostage by the fear of disappointing others. You're no longer parenting adults who refuse to grow. You're no longer dimming your light to keep fragile egos comfortable. That guilt that once held you captive now feels foreign. And while traces of it may still whisper, they no longer command your decisions. This isn't about becoming cold or hardened, it's about becoming whole. Because when your choices are no longer driven by guilt, they become rooted in truth. You stop giving from depletion and start giving from overflow. You stop managing people's feelings and start managing your boundaries. And the people who depended on your guilt to keep you compliant, they'll call it selfish. They'll say, you've changed, and they'll be right. You did change, you became free. When you begin changing after 60, especially in ways that challenge family roles or longstanding expectations, people often label you as rebellious. They see your new boundaries, your new peace, your new voice, and call it an attitude shift, a phase, a problem. But the truth is, this isn't rebellion. You're not acting out. You're coming home to yourself. For most of your life, you were following a script written by culture, family, religion, and fear. It told you to keep the peace even if it cost your inner one, to go along, to stay agreeable, to not question what good people are supposed to do. You did your best with that script. You followed it faithfully, and maybe it helped you survive. But at some point, it stopped helping you live. Rebellion pushes against something for the sake of reaction, but alignment isn't noisy, it's rooted, it's calm. It comes from an internal decision to live in harmony with your values, not someone else's demands. Alignment means finally matching your outer life with your inner truth. And when you do that, it will upset some people, especially those who only knew how to relate to the version of you that went along to get along. They'll say, you've changed, that you're too much now, that you become distant, cold, defiant. But what they're really feeling is your energy no longer bending to serve their comfort. And let's be clear, you're not being difficult, you're being honest. And honesty, especially from someone who used to stay quiet, feels jarring. The truth is, you didn't start a war, you just stopped living in a silent one. When you stop pretending, you stop bleeding emotionally. You stop performing for praise. You stop giving your time, your love, your care out of fear and start giving it from freedom. This is what real alignment feels like. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not defensive. It's steady, it's sacred, it's saying, this is who I am now, and I won't abandon myself to make you feel safe. You're not rebelling, you're remembering. And that is the most powerful kind of transformation. There's a strange, painful moment in personal growth, especially after 60, when people start treating you like you've done something wrong simply because you're finally doing something right for yourself. You begin honoring your needs, saying no without long explanations, releasing toxic family roles, spending time with people who actually energize you instead of those who only expect you to endure them. You start creating a life built on truth instead of tolerance, and suddenly people start pulling away, gossiping or making comments like, you've changed, you're selfish now, or you used to be more understanding. Here's the truth. They're not reacting to your failure, they're reacting to your freedom. They don't miss the broken you, they miss the version of you that never made them reflect on themselves, the version of you that quietly absorbed the emotional messes others left behind, the one who never asked for reciprocity, the one who made their life easier, often at the expense of your own. But when you step into your freedom, it disrupts that entire dynamic, because your freedom says, I don't have to explain my choices to be valid. I'm not here to be endlessly available while I silently unravel. Love is not control dressed in loyalty. And those who are used to you living in emotional chains, they'll interpret your liberation as a threat, not because you're hurting them, but because they relied on your captivity to avoid their own growth. They may paint you as the villain. That's okay, let them. Because here's what freedom really means after 60. It means you're finally living by your own values. It means you've stopped confusing pain with purpose. It means you're choosing healing over history. And most importantly, it means you are no longer available for dynamics that require you to abandon yourself. So don't let their discomfort trick you into shrinking again. You didn't fail anyone by growing. You simply stopped betraying yourself to make others feel more comfortable in their limitations. Let them react. You don't owe anyone the version of you that kept you caged. There comes a sacred point in your life, especially after 60, when peace becomes more than a desire, it becomes a non-negotiable. Not because you're bitter, not because you've given up, but because you finally learned how expensive it is to live without it. And yet, the moment you start protecting your peace, people will start calling you selfish. Why? Because peace often requires boundaries. It requires saying no without guilt. It requires walking away from conversations that drain you, declining invitations that feel obligatory, and stepping back from relationships that only survive through your silence. You see, protecting your peace means choosing discomfort in the short term, awkward moments, distance, maybe even criticism, in exchange for emotional clarity and wholeness in the long term. But here's what they won't tell you. People who call you selfish for protecting your peace are usually the ones who benefited from you not having any. They liked the version of you who was always available, always agreeable, always swallowing your truth just to keep things calm. But you've lived long enough to know calm and peace are not the same. Calm can be forced. It's the quiet after suppression. But peace is earned. It's the reward for choosing honesty over harmony, growth over guilt, and self-respect over social approval. And let's be honest, after 60, you're no longer interested in living a life that's palatable to everyone else but painful for you. Protecting your peace might mean not answering that phone call, not showing up to every family gathering, not letting people re-enter your life just because time has passed. It might mean unlearning your role as the one who holds it all together and finally letting yourself rest. And it doesn't make you selfish, it makes you awake. So if they call you distant, hard, cold, or ungrateful, let them. They are labeling what they don't understand. You're not pulling away out of anger. You're simply creating space to breathe, to think, to feel, to be. And the most powerful thing, you no longer need anyone's permission to do so. You've spent enough of your life in rooms that made you feel small. You don't owe anyone your peace, not when it took you this long to finally find it. At this point in your life, after all the years of giving, enduring, compromising, and trying to make everyone comfortable, you've earned something deeper than applause: clarity. And with that clarity comes peace, truth, and the courage to finally stand in your full self without apology. No, they don't hate you. They hate what your growth reminds them of, the risks they didn't take, the truths they never told, the boundaries they still fear. Your evolution challenges their comfort. Your healing disrupts their control. But that's not your burden to carry anymore. You didn't become difficult, you became whole. You didn't lose them. They lost access to the version of you that made their life easier at your expense. This is not the season to shrink. This is the season to stand, to protect the peace you fought for, to honor the truth you finally claimed, and to love yourself enough to walk away from anything that requires your silence, guilt, or self-betrayal to survive. After 60, your growth is not rebellion, it's liberation. Let them call it whatever they need to. You call it what it truly is: freedom